Hey everyone, I am here today with Carly. Carly is a business coach and founder of the Happy Leader Project, blending over a decade of martial arts experience with international coaching to guide impact driven business owners with confidence and clarity. She's known for helping clients feel fully authentic in their sales, empowering them to charge what they're worth, to serve at a higher level, and to build genuine trust with their clients. Carly's mission is to amplify the impact of those who are committed to serving others. I am so excited to have you here with us today, Carly, so that we can dive into a conversation all about sales strategies and really, hearing from you as the expert around sales, and then letting me tie in a little bit around how operational systems can support your sales machine. So, to kick things off, oftentimes sales and marketing get seen as the same thing when they really aren't, but they do need to work together. What do you have to share around the distinction between marketing for your business versus selling for your business?
Yeah, this is a great question, Caitlyn, and it's something that all busy business owners are struggling with because they're wearing all the hats, right? Like they're doing all the operations and they're also the head of marketing and they're also the salesperson a lot of
Mhm.
the times, or they're running the sales team. And this synergy between marketing and sales is super important because I'll give you an example to really walk you through it. One of my clients, when he first started with me, he kind of stumbled upon a marketing strategy that really worked for him. He had 100,000 followers on Instagram, but he was only bringing in about $1,000 of revenue a month for his business because there was that disconnect, right? He had the content machine that was producing marketing results, right? He had an audience, but those people weren't converting
Mhm.
into sales or into revenue. So
Yeah.
that's where the disconnect can happen. But when they're working together, you have that audience, and it can be a lot smaller than you actually think you need. And then
Mhm.
that audience is converting into actual revenue. That's the goal.
Yeah, and I love how you mentioned that and mentioned like the size of the audience that client had built because sometimes I think we get really focused on those vanity metrics around like number of followers, number of likes, kind of, stuff like that when at the end of the day we're business owners and we need to make money and we need to close sales. And so we need to make sure that our marketing strategy is one that's bringing in and building the right community of people who are ready to be buyers. And it can be very easy to fall into almost like the creator mindset or influencer mindset of just building the big audience, but not necessarily the audience we need to drive real revenue growth and results.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you there. And it can be tricky because as
Mhm.
business owners, we're always looking at our competitors and seeing what people are up to in our space. And it can be very difficult to actually assess what's working for them because most of the time you can only see the surface level marketing strategy of another business owner. Like you're not in there in their DMs saying what they're saying to
Mhm.
their prospects. You can only see the content that they're putting out or the ads that they're creating. And so when we copy just that top of the funnel, it doesn't actually tell us anything about the results we're going to get at the end.
Mhm. Yeah. So how would you say that marketing and sales efforts could work together better in business to really drive business growth?
Yeah, I think number one, it needs to be a clear strategy, right? There
Mhm.
needs to be a plan in place that's written down, that's operationalized, so that okay, when I get this lead, this marketing qualified lead, what is the next step that's generating a real conversation that's going
Mhm.
to lead to a sale? If you can't map out that journey,
Mhm.
on a whiteboard or on a piece of paper, then it's likely that your clients aren't going to go through that journey on their own. That they need that pathway already set for them.
Yeah, yeah, I love how you mentioned how you need a clear plan. You don't need to just be throwing noodles at the wall and seeing what sticks. And then the importance of really mapping out that journey. I think that's a great place where, the process of building out your marketing or your sales strategies also lends its hand towards the operation side of it. Like, okay, how will we take someone from this awareness phase to the consideration phase to like we need to figure out what
Yeah.
needs to happen on our end to help guide them that way because like you said they're not just going to like plop into the next phase.
Yeah, Yeah, they're not going to do it by accident. Probably. You might get a few, right, that really resonate with your top of the funnel message and are so eager to get started that they're going to jump in your door. But especially for newer business owners, or if you have a smaller audience,
Mm-hmm.
those that's not going to cover the rent, right? That's not going to bring enough revenue in. And there's so much opportunity, even with a smaller audience, to generate revenue that if you're not guiding them to that next phase, then you're missing the boat on a lot of sales.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that you mentioned, when you're first starting out. So, how would you maybe adjust your advice to a brand new entrepreneur versus one who's been in business and kind of is a little more seasoned?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked. This is my bread and butter. I work
Hmm.
mostly with either newer business owners or business owners that are newer to sales and marketing.
Yeah.
Um, and it boils down to, creating that plan and then measuring the results, right? Are you actually generating enough conversations? And
Hmm.
when you map out that plan, kind of like we mentioned earlier, that gives you the trigger points that you
Yeah.
can measure so that you can go back and tweak. But if you
Yeah.
don't have that plan, then you can't measure it. And if you can't measure it, then it's hard to know where people are falling out in the cycle.
Hmm.
And then the other part of it is a lot of newer business owners, they see the creators, the influencers, and so they try to approach their sales from a top down strategy, right? From a let's create content, let's hope that we get some people down at the bottom. But typically for newer business owners, it works better to build their systems starting from the bottom and then working their way up to the top of the funnel so that
Hmm.
they're getting the sales first, not the audience first, and that they're getting enough data points at the parts that really matter for
Hmm.
conversion before they start to amplify their messaging. Does
Yeah.
that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, I love that you touched on that because, as it like an example that I did when I first started was kind of accidentally. It wasn't in a strategic manner, but I did kind of build it bottom up instead, where I did a lot of the networking and a lot of the relationship building and reaching out to existing people in my network to try to get the sales. And then from getting the sales, that gave me a lot of data to know how to better communicate my offer to a broader audience. And so, like, as number of clients increased over time, I had a lot more, well, just testimonials to help with the conversion process, but also data, around how to communicate what it is we were doing.
Yeah, I'm so curious when you started versus when you started really amplifying the message. How different did your idea of your business change? Like sometimes from as business owners, we are so in our solution,
Hmm.
right? We're so passionate about our solution that we're like, okay, well, I want the solution and I want as many people to hear about it. But sometimes we miss the right pain point, right? We
Yeah.
miss hitting the right pain point that comes in those conversations and working with your clients. So did you make any adjustments or was it kind of exactly what you expected?
No, I definitely made some adjustments for sure. Because I started out like me being the more like systems oriented type A, like organized kind of mindset. I'm like, you want this because you want things to run efficiently and you want it to run smoothly and you want to make sure you're not like wasting resources and da 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 da. And so I was going from the approach of like, I like a tidy house, like for my business, so you
Mm,
should too. And I had to learn, like, no, that's not actually the case. Like, yes, that is like kind of the hidden motivating factor, but what really is like their pain point was they have no time because they're like putting out
mm,
fires constantly, or their business has grown faster than they expected, and they feel like they're like in this weird phase of still doing a lot of the like client stuff in their business, but they're now have like a team to manage and they never even thought about that. And they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I just live in chaos, And so like start to learn how
yeah.
to communicate, let's build the business you want. Like I remember having one client come to me and she was like, I feel like I've built this business, but now when I look at it, it doesn't feel like it's my business. Like this isn't what I wanted to create and I don't know how we
Oh
even got
wow.
it. And they were successful. Like they had a team, they had great revenue numbers, all of that, but it like was not what she wanted. And so we worked to adjust her systems, adjust some of her team like processes and culture and development stuff so that we could start to pivot that structure and the workflows in her business to really build the business she wants, not the one she like just so happened to like piece together in that moment of growth.
Wow. Yeah, that is so powerful. It's like, okay, nobody really wants a CRM. Nobody really wants a sales flow chart or like, an outreach strategy. They want more time. They want
Mhm.
to build a business that they're proud of. And so it's so cool when you can really start to see your solution from your
Yeah,
client's perspective because that changes the conversations that you have, but it
yeah.
also changes the level of impact you can have on them too.
Yeah, yeah. Like another example,
Hmm.
SOPs are like the last thing anyone wants to do, right? Like they're the most unsexy part of operations. So trying to
I
like,
don't know. I personally love SOPs, but you're right. It's a tough
yeah,
selling point.
yeah, like trying to instill in someone the importance of us like documenting your process has been probably my biggest struggle to date in like a sales conversation. And
Oh
I
yeah.
finally like found a way to communicate it of like, how many times in a week are you answering the same question to your team members? And just like the question fatigue, it's like that parent who has the toddler who says, why? Again, you
You're
know?
like you're like, watch this Loom video, toddler.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like,
I
if
made
you had
this
an
Loom SOP for you.
SOP, you just tell them to go read the SOP.
Yeah,
And so it's a lot around learning the right messaging or just like the right framework to put around what it is you do so that in your marketing and in those sales conversations, it resonates correctly with your prospect.
absolutely. And this is exactly where a lot of business owners are struggling, but also, so a lot of the business owners, at least the ones that I work with, they started their business because they want to have an impact, right? They want to serve clients at a higher level. And so when we talk about sales, it's actually less about, okay, how can we generate more revenue?
Mhm.
It's, how can we communicate this in a way that resonates with our clients so that we can serve them at a higher
Yeah.
level? So, SOPs, that's a perfect example. If I'm just spitting out SOP all day long, right, I have this amazing solution
Yeah.
that could be serving my clients, but if they're not if they're not picking up the phone or if they're not answering that call to service, then they're losing out on that solution and I'm losing out on that ability to impact them and help them, develop the business that they dream of. So
Mhm.
I couldn't agree more with that shift in messaging. Sometimes it's just the smallest shift that makes the hugest difference.
Yeah, yeah. I love that you touched on a lot of things there around like bringing in the right clients, the right leads, the type of impact you want to have. So, kind of, we'll go off on one and then come back to the other. But
Yeah.
what are some strategies or recommendations you would have for a business owner when they're trying to figure out how to better attract not just more leads, but the right leads?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it boils down to what we were just talking about, this, so a solution focus versus client focus. So a lot
Hmm.
of the times we don't know what we want, right? We don't know what it is that we want. And this is true in any sort of goal that you might have in your life, right? Sometimes the exact picture of what you want might look a little fuzzy, but I can guarantee you almost everybody and all of your ideal clients know exactly what they don't want, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to be managing the chaos. They don't want to be losing sales. They don't want to be chasing down clients, whatever that is, right? But they know exactly what they don't want. So when we're talking about finding your ideal clients, a lot of it boils down to getting really really clear on not your solution, you're plenty clear on that already, but the pain points that you're solving, and not just the pain points, but the pain points that lead to your clients making a buying decision. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, one of your clients might be struggling with delegation,
Hmm.
but they also might be losing a ton of money,
Mhm.
because operational inefficiencies, right?
Mhm.
And based on your client, they one of those is going to be a higher priority right now. So if you're talking to the wrong pain point, you're going to lose them because
Mm.
you're not quite addressing the thing that's the most burning to them right now. So
Yeah.
does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, I would say it does, and I think it leads into, you know, you'll also have different ideal clients with different pain points. So it's finding a way in that relationship building process with a potential client to figure out what their priority is so that you can make sure you're speaking to it.
Exactly. Yes. And so
Yeah.
this is where the sometimes if we're only doing a marketing approach to generate revenue and we're not focused on the sales, we miss the mark because our marketing message has to be somewhat generic, somewhat vague in order to appeal to all of our ideal clients, even if they have
Mhm.
some nuances in their pain points. But
Yeah.
when we have real sales conversations, that allows us to get really specific, what
Yeah.
does this pain, not just, okay, you don't have enough time, but what does that mean for you? Like, what
Yeah.
does not enough time mean for you? Is it not enough time with your kids or not enough time to do a hobby or not enough time to work on the business instead of in the business? That
Mhm.
nuance, you only uncover that when you're having one-to-one conversations typically.
Mhm. Yeah. I love that you mentioned that because in in my space, I think a lot of times people try to automate too much, especially in their sales process. And I've seen, a trend of people trying to figure out, well, how can I eliminate having to do the sales call? How can I just
Yeah.
completely automate, have some things sent to them automatically, and then they just sign and buy? And I'm like, okay, yeah, that would be nice, like in an ideal world, I guess, because you're not having to put in as much time. But the reality is, if someone's going to pay you, hundreds or thousands of dollars to support them in their business, then they wanna get to know you, and I think a lot of times sometimes, a lot of times, I don't maybe too often, we try to, like, take too much of that one-to-one interaction out of the process for the sake of, saving our own time and not thinking about how it's impacting that experience for the potential client.
Absolutely. I mean, especially now, I don't know, I'm sure a lot of your clients are just getting like pitch slapped,
Mhm.
left and right on LinkedIn in their email inboxes. Um, and so right now the population is starting to become more like AI detectors, right? Even if you
Mhm.
just sound generic or
Yeah,
like a robot, um, the chances that you're gonna get through to them are pretty slim. I'll
yeah,
give you an example. One of my instructors at the karate studio I help, he's totally friendly guy, but when he picked up the phone on this particular day, um, he was reading a script and just didn't have enough like tonality change in his voice, and he was calling one of our existing students, so someone who knows him, who already trusts him, who already likes him.
yeah.
And as soon as he started reading that and it sounded like a script, he was hung up on immediately with somebody that
It
he
sounded like
knew
a robot, yeah.
because he sounded like a robot. And so people are just so attuned and sensitive to the generic, to the robotic. So yes, automation has its place in
Yeah.
your funnel, right? It has its place. I think it can really help you create an efficient process. It can
Mhm.
create some efficiencies on the operational side of the sales. It can even create conversation starters. But
Yeah.
when it comes to listening, right? When it comes to actively listening and making sure that your client is feeling heard and that
Mm.
you are really there with them, you can't you can't automate that.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a fine line to balance between what do we automate for the sake of, like, both creating a better client experience because of, like, the level of attention that can be shown through the automations, but also what should we not automate to keep that personal human touch that's needed to build that
Yeah.
relationship, that trust.
Yeah, and there's so many different areas of your business that you can leverage automation to save time.
Mhm.
So I'm sure maybe you can speak to this, Caitlin. If we don't want to necessarily save time in this way by automating the most important touch points,
Mhm.
that need that one to one. What other areas of our business can we automate so we can dedicate more time to creating those personal connections?
Yeah, yeah, and this is actually something that I've done within Upwell is I've left the sales process still very, like, manual, like, high touch. We do sales calls, we do multiple if needed, we really work on building the relationship, all of that. But then in the, like, operational side of us, like, doing our day-to-day, like, running of the business and our client implementation and stuff, we have a lot of that automated to save time so that I can put the level of attention I need towards the sales process, towards nurturing and taking care of our existing clients, things like that. And so we have a lot of automations built out within our project management system in ClickUp to help with the
Hmm.
automated parts or with automating parts of um, moving us through the workflow for different things that we do with changing of assignees, moving due dates, changing different pieces of information or updating via a template, things like that. And then a lot of admin things, like even if it's as simple as automating the creation of new invoices for recurring monthly clients. Like just like those small little things where you're gonna have to task switch to do it, like automating
Yeah.
it more than the 1 minute it takes to go in and do it because now it's not on your brain. You don't have to worry about it. And so we've automated a lot of just the logistical parts of our business to make it where we can really put the time and effort that we need to into the human parts of it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There's one thing that you just said that really resonated with me, which was the mental load, right, of
Mhm.
all of these tasks. And
Yeah.
I find that so true in the sales process when you don't have a process as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even though it's the business owner that is doing that high touch point, or it's myself who's uncovering those pain points, I find
Mhm.
for a lot of business owners when they don't have a plan, right? They don't know, even if it's a script that they're using, but that they're deviating from. Right? I
Mhm.
find having that there takes a lot of that mental load off, so it doesn't feel like I'm starting new with every sales call, or I'm starting new with every outreach, or I'm wrestling with the same self doubt with, reaching out to a client that I think has ghosted
Mhm.
me, right? It's when you have that process in place, it takes away a lot of that mental load that can
Yeah.
come with the sales. And often that's more of the challenge than the actual time.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I love that you mentioned, you can have a script, but you might deviate from it and stuff like that because the whole point of the process is to be like a guideline, like a guiding light. But if in
Hmm.
different use cases, you need to adjust that process for that specific instance, like do it. A lot of times people think if they have a clear process, it's gonna like make them feel like they're defined, like within a box or something, and that's like far from it. It erases a lot of that mental load because it guides you, and you're not, hopping off of a sales call with what should I do next? You know exactly what you need to do next. Process. Now, if your process is typically for you when you're like onboarding a client to start within the next 1 to 4 weeks, but this client inquired because they're planning for like January of next year to have you, for 2025, then like, okay, you're going to deviate a little. You don't need to like send that proposal that is worded in a way that's like, I'm excited to start tomorrow kind of thing, but like you at least
Yeah.
know what the next part is and you can deviate as needed.
Yeah. And having that process, I don't know if you find this true in other, areas of operations, but if you don't have the process, it becomes really difficult to improve,
Yeah.
right? The process is there so that you can test something against that process and then go, oh, you know what? Actually, this didn't quite work. I need to tweak this. And
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
or, oh, I just had this other idea that I want to try. And now you have a place to put it instead of it being one of those other million things that, is running around in your head.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that you mentioned that because if you're doing it differently every time and you're not taking like pausing long enough to think about what the process was that you did that time, there's like no way to track any sort of data point. And I don't mean data points like advanced analytics and numbers and stuff, literally just like those like thoughts and notes that you might take, like those types of data points throughout the process. if you do it different every time, then there's nothing really to assess to try to improve or make changes or anything like that. So going off of that, I wanted to ask, what would you say? How would you define a sales process and how it affects your ability to grow your business over time?
Yeah, great question. That's a big question. So let me know if you want to dive into any particular part of it. Um, but when I'm thinking about developing a sales process for a brand new business owner, let's say,
Mhm.
it starts with even before we into the sales conversations, it starts with getting really clear on the offer and the audience,
Yeah.
right? Your sales process has to be built on top of your audience and your offer. Otherwise, it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall, right? You don't know what to say, and there with that comes a lot of self doubt or questioning or starting from scratch. So it all starts with audience and offer and getting really clear on those. From there, you have to really understand what pain points are most critical to that
Mhm.
audience and make sure that, of course, the offer aligns to that. But from there, it's pretty simple, right? You can find a sales cycle if you just Google it, right? It starts with generating leads and prospecting. Marketing can help with that. Different marketing strategies can support that. But you need prospects, you need leads, you need a system for getting them onto the call or into your trial or into that next phase.
Yeah.
And then from there, you need a process to get from the call to onboarding as a client.
Yeah.
From there, you need a process for how do you retain that client? How do you leverage that client to create testimonials, create referrals, or produce more business for yourself,
Mhm.
whether that's upselling
Mhm.
or just getting referrals. So for
Yeah.
each parts of those steps, it has a different process that depends on the audience and the offer.
Yeah, and that all leads into revenue growth or business growth over time because now you have clear next steps throughout the entire customer journey.
Absolutely. And for most business owners, some are totally happy being solopreneurs forever, and that's great. That process will help you iterate and become more efficient. But for those who want to eventually have a team, having that process in place allows you to delegate parts of that cycle away
Yeah.
in a way that you're going to still get consistent results.
Yeah.
For example, in the martial arts industry, we have instructors that are responsible for totally different parts of the sales cycle. So it's not
Mhm.
always one person that's guiding a prospect from
Yeah.
prospect from lead all the way to onboarding and referral. There are handoff points, but we
Yeah.
all trust that we can hand somebody off because we know the process.
Yeah, definitely. And going off of the concept of the process with it and a little bit of a discussion around systems that can support your sales, um, what like insights would you, I guess, share around having a CRM or a way to track and document your different conversations and leads throughout the sales process?
Yeah, I would say having a CRM is the most effective way to sticking to the process you committed to.
Yeah.
So I see this a lot, especially when it comes to outreach and follow up.
Mhm.
Most people aren't doing enough outreach and they're not doing enough follow up. And it's for two reasons. Number one, um, it can be time consuming, right? It
Yeah.
can be time consuming to send out those messages. But more often than not, it's because it is uncomfortable or because it's scary.
Yeah.
And so when you have a CRM that's telling you you have to reach out to this person today, now you've taken out your own, human and totally natural and normal feelings of, do I want to do the outreach today? Am I being annoying with this outreach or annoying with this follow up? And you kind of take that out of it and you know, okay, I just have to get this done because it's on my task list for my CRM. And it
Yeah.
feels a little bit less like a decision you have to make every time and more of oh, this is my process and I stick to it. If I want to make adjustments, I make adjustments to the process, not necessarily to, you know, not based on a whim of, how excited I am to do outreach today.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of times you do have to follow up with someone at least a few times before you get a response, just because they're all busy. Or they'll reply and say, follow
Mhm.
up in 2 weeks because I have a lot going on, or something like that. And you
Yeah.
have to really like push through that mental blocker of, am I being annoying? Like, like worrying about like all of that stuff. And I would say one helpful thing that you can have in a CRM, depending on the one you use, is if you find that you can't get past that, a lot of CRMs have automations you can set up where once they hit, say, a follow up stage in your pipeline, it'll just like follow up with them every 4 days or whatever it is. Um, Obviously not like into perpetuity, but like you would set up however many emails you want to do those follow-ups until you move them out of that stage. And I think leaning into tech that way can really help take you out of that part that might be a blocker for you, just to help you actually begin to drive results. Because at the end of the day, and you touched on this earlier with impact, sales can feel hard sometimes because we started this business to serve people and work with them well. And so we don't want to come across as desperate or annoying or anything like that. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, them saying yes or us putting in that work for the follow up is letting us do our job to help them build the business they want and to help them have that level of impact. That was kind of our whole why to start the business, anyways.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I always ask my clients this, is it more important to you to kind of preserve your comfort? Right?
Yeah,
Is it more important to you to preserve your comfort around follow up and around outreach? Or is it more important to you to make the impact or make the revenue or hit the goal that you set for your business?
yeah,
And a lot of the times, okay, when we really think about it, we want to make the impact. We're willing to be a little uncomfortable in the beginning so that we can serve at a higher level or so we can make the revenue that we've set out to make.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And I love how you mentioned that. Like, do you want to stay in your comfort or do you want to like create this impact you want? And I feel like that could be a whole nother conversation for another time.
Yeah, yeah. That's a longer conversation for sure.
Yeah. So going a little bit more into like this concept of your sales strategy is really working well and kind of building out that sales machine to support you in reaching your goals. What advice would you give for someone who's trying to figure out how to build a high performing kind of sales machine in their business?
Yeah, good question. So a lot of business owners can get away with keeping some loose numbers around their process and iterating on that. But if you want really like high performance, you need to know the 80/20 of where you're going to make your tweaks, right?
Hmm.
So it really has to be measured, right? It really has to be measured and tracked so you know where are people getting lost in my sales cycle so that you know where you are kind of falling off on your messaging or falling off on your strategy. I'll give you a good example of this. Sometimes what's intuitive to us
Hmm.
in terms of what's actually going to get us a result is misleading.
Yeah.
So one time, I don't know about you, but like if I'm tinkering with like a flyer on Canva, that is like my number one way to procrastinate on the things that make me feel uncomfortable, right? Because I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, it's like a safe little environment. Like nobody's gonna reject you with Canva. You can like make it look pretty. And so, anyways, a long time ago, I was creating a marketing flyer for the martial arts school that I was working for, and I made it like it was immaculate. Like
Yeah.
my
Perfection.
graphics, yeah, it was perfection. Not to toot my own horn, but it was great. I'd spent hours laboring over this flyer. We put it out there, and I was like, this is going to be amazing. Like people are going to look at this, they're going to sign their kids up immediately. That kind of like when you make something really pretty, that's kind of what you expect to see.
Yeah.
Um, and then what ended up happening is we tested that flyer against a flyer that my boss at the time had slapped together in like 5 minutes. And it was like the fonts were all wrong, the colors didn't look good together, the alignment was wrong. There was like five different font sizes, whatever, right? All the graphic designing rules had been broken, and his flyer performed better. So,
Yep.
so it goes to show that the things that you think are going to perform better, yeah, sometimes they do, right? Like making your website look prettier, making things look more aesthetic,
Yeah.
branding, whatever it is, it might improve your sales process, but if you're not measuring it, you actually have no way to know.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. What are a couple like metric examples, like something that someone should try to be tracking, just to kind of help with if someone's not tracking anything right now to figure out maybe where to start.
Yeah, great question. The most key numbers are, new clients, clients that are being retained. Those are the two big ones. If they're not tracking those already, get on that immediately. And then with new clients, that tends to be a lagging indicator, meaning you put in the work this month, you're not going to see the results of that work for another month or 2 months. And so when you see, your clients drop, or your
Mhm.
number of new clients drop, or your revenue drop, oftentimes it's too late to make the adjustments. So
Yeah.
look through your process and think, okay, what steps contribute to me acquiring new clients? And that's what you should be tracking. Typically, this ends up being the number of outreach messages or the number of conversations initiated, the number of sales calls booked, and
Mhm.
then the result of those sales calls. So for everybody, that might look a little bit different based on their exact cycle, but that's the gist.
Yeah, I love that you say it's a lagging measure to look at because I've learned that the hard way more than once. You would think you'd only need to do it one time, but um, I fell into this bad pattern of following my process properly, having a good number of leads coming in, closing the amount of
Yeah,
clients I needed. But then because as a business owner, you're wearing a lot of the hats, I would then be very busy and like knee deep in implementation mode for those clients. So then I would be very quick to drop the sales process that I had created,
yeah,
and I would think all is fine, and so you wouldn't pick it back up when you should, and then as a bunch of those clients start offboarding, you realize, "Oh, I have no one in the pipeline to close." And it's not like a, "Oh, I'll just fix it this month." It would take a couple months because our sales cycle takes a few months because having someone come in to do your operations and like to see like the messy behind the scenes takes building a lot of trust before you get that yes. And so I remember
absolutely.
last fall, we had a lot of clients coming on. We had a couple of big projects coming on. We were getting busy. So then January, February, I really neglected sales. Um, and then all of Q2 this year was significantly lower and slower than Q1, Q3, or Q4 because when it started getting slow in Q1, I was like, ooh, crap, I need to like prioritize this again. But it took time. It took that lag for things to pick up and get busy again. And so you really have to learn, even in the busy time, you need to keep prioritizing that process you have.
Absolutely. And I'd say when you put numbers to it, right, when you know, okay, I need to have this many conversations a
Hmm.
week or this many conversations a month, it really takes a lot of the kind of guilt that we can feel as entrepreneurs around how our business is doing, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've struggled with this. I've certainly struggled with this, where you have a slow month and you're like, man, I guess I'm just not cut out for this. You're like, I guess I, you know, we, I, and maybe this is a me problem here, but it's sometimes I will personalize those metrics, right? I have my own sense of self-worth attached to those metrics, which is not necessarily healthy to begin with, right? If we can attack that, great. But there is still some of that residual, like, oh, I wanted to do this and I didn't quite live up to what I was hoping, or the standard that I had set for myself.
Yeah.
And when you see the numbers, right? When you see the numbers of, oh, it's not because I'm a bad business owner, it's not because I wasn't cut out for this, it's just because I didn't have enough conversations last month. It's
Yeah.
like it's as simple as that, right? So you can
Yeah.
start to kind of disassociate your sense of self-worth when you start tracking the numbers appropriately, when you start tracking the leading indicators instead of the lagging indicators, because you
Yeah.
know where the effort wasn't put in, or what caused that result. It wasn't
Mhm.
you, it was just the number of conversations you had.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So, as we begin to wrap up today, I want you to share what are one to two of the most important kind of insights you hope viewers take away from our discussion today. And then please share how anyone watching today can connect with you and learn more about applying these sales concepts to their business.
Yeah, if there is one thing that people walk away with, it is that they likely already have the skills that they need to be effective in sales.
I
It's
love
not something that you are born with. If you were born, able to be born with sales skills, like good for
that.
you. That wasn't me. Um, but you're not born to be a salesperson. You're not born to even be a business owner. But those skills are likely you already have them. You just need to apply them in the right areas of your business to be effective. I've seen
Mm,
plenty of people be effective in sales that were introverted, that were shy, that had a stutter, that were awkward, you name it. Anybody can be effective in this area when they start to apply skills that they do have to the right areas. So
yeah,
that's the one takeaway I hope your listeners walk away with.
I love that you mentioned that because even like my toddler, who's like
Probably an
obviously,
amazing salesperson.
yeah, and she will press and press and press. And, it's crazy to see how someone, even at the age of two, almost three, um, will change the way that she's talking about something or the way she asks you or demands for something to try to make sure she can get the outcome she wants. Like we all um, kind of intuitively know how to do it. We just need to maybe fine tune those skills a little bit and learn how to be more comfortable and push past like the
Yeah.
emotional bit or the mental blocker we might have when it comes to selling ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure your toddler is the best at follow up. Right? If you ever tell a kid, like, oh, I promise we're going to get ice cream today,
They
like,
don't
I
forget.
guarantee you they're going to follow up with you until they get their ice cream. It works.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, it can be, like, morning time and we're trying to get out the door to daycare, and I'll be like, "Oh, yeah, we can do that when you get home." And it's like, as soon as we walk in the door, "Can we play Legos now? You said I could." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, let's play
Yeah.
Legos."
Man, good thing those toddlers don't know how to work CRMs yet because they would just be unstoppable.
Oh, yeah, yep. So how can people connect further with you, Carly?
Yeah, the best way is to visit happyleaderproject.com and book a strategy session. Even if you're not sure if it's something that you want to pursue, but you are struggling with sales or feeling authentic in your sales, highly recommend just hopping on a call. Sometimes we create a 90-day strategy or a longer term strategy, but sometimes even just that one call can lead to generating more sales.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I will put the link to Carly's website below in the description so you guys can easily click over and connect with her if you want to. Thank you all for watching today as we chatted all about sales strategies and building your sales machine. If you have any other questions or want to learn more about this, you connect with Carly with her link in the description, or you can jump over to our website and connect with us where we can talk all about tech stack and how to utilize technology to help with streamlining and tracking and all of that within your sales cycle.